London welcomed the new year with a spectacular firework display around the London Eye on January the 1st. After midnight, London was lit up by one of the best firework displays witnessed in the capital city in recent years. 32 people were killed on January the 13th after an Italian cruise ship carrying more than 4,000 people ran aground close to the Italian coast. The ship's captain was arrested as authorities investigated the cause of the incident. Amateur footage posted on social network sites in January claimed to show evidence of continued unrest in Syria. Homs became the heart of a growing insurgency, with activists estimating that a third of all fatalities on both sides of the conflict have occurred in Homs. Bombers targeted staff at Israel's embassies in India and Georgia on February the 13th. A bomb exploded in New Delhi, but a second device in Tbilisi defused. Indian police said one woman was injured. Greece's government met on February the 21st to finalise details of economic reforms to be passed in Parliament that helped Greece receive its second bailout loan from its international partners. Protests against the burning of copies of the Quran drew thousands of angry Afghans to the streets in February, chanting "Death to America." The Taliban urged Afghans to target foreign military bases in retaliation for the Quran burning at Bagram airfield. Two massive solar flares erupted on March the 4th and March the 6th. 16 Afghan civilians were killed in a shooting spree by a US soldier on March the 11th in Afghanistan's Kandahar province. Two large explosions hit Damascus on March the 17th. The first went off in a local street, whilst the other targeted a police building. A gunman on a motorbike shot dead at least 4 people at a Jewish school in France's Toulouse. The gunman was killed by special forces at his home 3 days later. The UN Security Council unanimously adopted a Russian-European drafted resolution on April the 21st that authorized an initial deployment of up to 300 unarmed military observers to Syria for 3 months. Several hundred Occupy Wall Street protesters took to the streets of downtown Manhattan on April the 27th, angry at what they called an unjust economic system. Pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi took her place in Myanmar's parliament on May the 2nd, ushering in a historic new political era, nearly a quarter of a century fight against military dictatorship. Former Bosnian Serb army commander Ratko Mladic appeared in court on May the 16th for his genocide trial. He was formally charged with commanding the 1995 massacre of up to 8,000 Muslim men and boys in the Bosnian enclave of Srebrenica. The Libyan convicted of the 1988 Lockerbie bombing was buried on May the 21st. Abdul Basit al-Magrahi died in his bed in Tripoli on May the 20th, surrounded by family. Tens of thousands of people lined the River Thames in London on June the 3rd to watch the start of the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee. 1,000 vessels of all shapes and sizes took part in the flotilla. The leader of Greece's Conservative New Democracy Party, Antonis Samaras, was sworn in as Prime Minister by President Carlos Papoulias on June the 20th after receiving a mandate to form a government. The Ohio nuclear plant in western Japan went back online July the 1st. The move sparked protests in cities around Japan. Libyans began voting in their first free national election in 60 years on July the 7th. The election was closely watched around the world by both supporters and critics of NATO's bombing campaign. A gunman, identified by police as James Holmes, carried an assault rifle, shotgun and handgun into a packed midnight premiere screening of the Batman film Dark Knight Rises on July the 20th. Holmes killed 12 people. It was all eyes on London on July the 27th when the Olympic Games opened with a spectacular opening ceremony in the Olympic Stadium. The Games went without a hitch. UN Arab League Special Envoy to Syria Kofi Annan announced on August the 1st that he was stepping down from his role, saying that it was impossible for him to push for a political solution in Syria because of a lack of united international pressure. Ecuador granted political asylum to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Foreign Minister Ricardo Patino said on August the 16th, a day after the British government threatened to storm Ecuador's embassy in London to arrest Assange. Three members of a feminist punk band, Pussy Riot, were found guilty on August the 17th of hooliganism motivated by religious hatred after they staged an anti-Kremlin protest in a church. Egyptian protesters scaled the walls of the US Embassy in Cairo on September 11th and pulled down the American flag during a demonstration of what they said was a film being produced in the United States that insulted the Prophet Muhammad. In Libya, the US ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens, and 3 other embassy staff were killed in a rocket attack on their car. Pope Benedict arrived in Beirut on September the 14th on a 3-day tour during which he promoted peace in the region. It was the first papal visit in Lebanon in 15 years. On September 26th, angry protesters chanted traitors in front of the parliament in Athens during a mass rally and a general strike called by the country's biggest unions. Up to 70,000 people joined the protest. Fighting in Syria continued into October between armed groups and government forces in Aleppo, in the northwest of the country. Opposition fighters said they were making progress in their battle against the Syrian army loyal to President Bashar al-Assad. At least 2 people were killed and 15 wounded by a huge bomb that exploded in a street in central Beirut on October the 19th. Hurricane Sandy began battering the US East Coast on October the 29th with fierce winds and driving rain as the monster storm shut down transportation, shuttered businesses and sent thousands scrambling for higher ground. A number of people were killed in the disaster. US President Barack Obama won a second term in the White House on November the 7th by beating Republican challenger Mitt Romney. CIA Director David Petraeus resigned his post as head of the nation's leading spy agency on November the 9th, saying he had engaged in an extramarital affair and acknowledged that he showed extremely poor judgment. Hamas's military chief was killed when his car was hit by an Israeli airstrike on November the 14th, with multiple Israeli attacks rocking the Gaza Strip. Cross-border violence continued for several days as the Israeli military continued its attack on Gaza. Protesters in Cairo began to gather in Tahrir Square during November, calling for an overthrow of the regime after Mohamed Morsi issued a decree on November the 22nd assuming sweeping powers. Japanese fire department officials said that a long section of a road tunnel collapsed onto cars on December the 1st as they were driving through, killing many and causing a fire. A London hospital targeted by a prank call from an Australian radio station while treating Prince William's pregnant wife Kate said the nurse who took the call was found dead on December the 7th. And finally, Hamas's leader Khalid Mashal ended decades of exile on December the 7th with a triumphal first ever visit to the Gaza Strip.